Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Very Best Podcast, an interview show focused on our personal connections to the Pokemon franchise and what it means to us. With me today is the editor of JotoTimes.com, a Pokemon-focused newsletter publishing weekly content since 2023, with a focus on opinions, personal memories, interviews, and nostalgia, gentleman Darren. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So with every guest, I try to pick a Pokemon trainer class that fits them. Obviously, yours was easy. You're from the UK, so gentleman, I was like, oh, it's an easy one. I might as well just put that in there. With the other guests, it's a little bit harder. You made it a little bit easy with your country of origin. So thank you for joining me. I'm excited to have you. Normally, we start the show with a segment called Fast Five, which is a set of five icebreaker questions that the guest doesn't know about. And it's basically meant to get us in the groove of talking about Pokemon. There are questions with right and wrong answers, but it's not, the segment isn't about you getting them right. It's just about top of mind, answering as quickly as possible. So don't worry too much about getting the answer wrong.
Oh, that's fine, because I'm probably going to get them all wrong, so I'll just let you know in advance.
I try
Being
to
put on the
shape
spot is awful, yeah.
Yeah, I try to shape them around the guests themselves, so some familiarity. They're not going to be completely wild questions that I wouldn't expect you to know.
Okay.
But that being said, there is probably going to be some stuff that you knew at one point you might have forgotten. But, you know, we're not young guns anymore, so we'll see how you do. 5 questions. Are you ready, Darren?
I am ready.
Okay. Question number 1. What year did Pokemon Crystal release outside of Japan?
Okay. So it depends, because I think in the UK it was 2001. It may have been earlier in the US. I'm going to say 2001.
Correct. Question number 2. What was the original version of the slogan, "Gotta catch 'em all"?
Catch 'em if you can.
Yep. Number 3. Johto is located in which direction from Kanto?
It's to the west of Kanto.
Correct. Number 4. What Pokemon was almost named Spectre?
Haunter.
Correct. Number 5. How much does Rowlet weigh?
Oh, goodness me. That one I am going to get. Are we talking like in pounds here?
I put both, just to be safe.
Okay. It must be a very light thing. Goodness me. Oh, you've got me with this one, and I love Rowlet. So I'm going to say 23 pounds.
3.3 pounds or 1.5 kilograms. Yeah.
What? Goodness, I've made
Doesn't
like
make
the
sense.
fattest Rowlet ever.
Well, I think it's because, birds, they have hollow bones. I don't know. It still does. It seems a little light for Rowlet, especially the way it's portrayed in a lot of parts of the franchise. But you did good. You got 4 of the 5. The one I figured you wouldn't be able to get, because even if it's your favorite Pokemon, who memorizes the weight of the Pokemon?
Exactly. If I'd got that right, I would have been shot. I probably would have fallen out of my chair, actually. So.
And funny enough, a lot of these questions I actually got from interviews you did on Johto Times.
So I should know the answers
I didn't know
then.
about. Exactly. But I didn't know that the original slogan was possibly going to be "Catch 'em if you can," which I thought was interesting. And then I've known about some of like the beta names for Pokemon, but there was quite a handful of them that I had never heard of before in your interview you did. So I thought that was pretty neat. And I figured, if there was anything he would know. Not to say you couldn't forget something you learned in an interview, but I thought it would be pretty fun to throw those in there for you.
Well, interestingly, Spectre is Spectre in France, I believe. I think it did keep that name.
Oh, cool.
I could be wrong about that. I've got a French friend. He told me that, but he could be misremembering. I'm not sure, but might be worth checking out.
With the Fast 5 done, we're going to now head into your first steps. Everyone remembers their first time playing Pokemon. So, up at the top, I want you to let me know, Darren, how did you first learn about Pokemon as a series growing up?
So I remember it quite vividly. I was just about to go into IT class. There was some steps going up to it, and we were all kind of like lined up ready to go in, and there was people talking about Pokemon. And I guess maybe it had just been announced, or like maybe the show had been shown. I'm not entirely sure on the specific like month or date or anything, but we went into the class, everyone got onto the computers, and immediately they started going to the Pokemon website and the Wizards of the Coast website, and they were looking up the Pokedex and the base set cards that were released at the time, and there were just people crowding around the computers. So obviously I went over to see, well, what's going on, And yeah, they were just looking at the website and they were just talking about it. And then after the lesson, I went into another lesson with another friend, and I was curious. I was like, well, what's this Pokemon thing? And my friend brought out these, like, it was like a, I don't know if it was his like a homemade folder or something, but he had a folder full of these cards, and he was just showing off his his favorites, but it was very sort of cloak and dagger because he didn't want the teacher to see them, so he had them under the desk, and he was like, oh, here's these cards. I can't remember which ones they were. And then he said, oh, you should check out the first movie website. So it was I think it was the Warner Brothers website, and he wrote it down on a piece of paper and said, here, check this out when you've got some time. And from there, it just kind of, I got really intrigued. I saw the anime on television, and yeah, it just exploded from there. It was right there at the beginning, 1999, Pokemania. It was absolutely huge.
I always am fascinated how people come to learn about Pokemon from a multitude of ways, and that's a very interesting story because oftentimes you hear like, oh, we were at school, somebody brought out a card or somebody mentioned this, and it was funny how communal Pokemon was at the beginning. It still is to this day in different ways. So you learn about the game, the franchise, and you check out the anime. What was the first game you played and received, maybe as a gift, or maybe you got yourself?
So it was about 2 years later, because we
Wow.
didn't have a lot of money growing up. So I couldn't get the games. I mean, before that, I think the very first thing that I had was this poster. My father got these tokens out of the newspaper, and we went over to a local store. It may have been a WH Smith or Woolworth store, and we exchanged them for this poster, and I had it above my bed, and it had all 150 Pokemon on it, and I just used to memorize them. And there was a point where I could memorize in order all 150. I don't think I can do it these days, but at the time I was just absorbing all of this information. But then I got stickers, and then I got some cards, and from friends they'd given me things. But the actual first video game that I got, my mum, we went into a local game station, and she bought me a Game Boy Color and a copy of Pokemon Blue. And I didn't realize at the time that it was a Game Boy game and that it wasn't a Game Boy Color game. But it was a good thing that I had the Game Boy Color for what came later. But I played through Pokemon Blue so much, like my mum had to take it off me and hide it. And then I found the game because she was really poor at hiding things. So it was obviously in the top of the wardrobe. So I took it out of there, continued playing, and then I put it back. So she still to this day doesn't know that I did that. And I was obsessed with the game. Absolutely obsessed. And then a few months after that, I got Pokemon Crystal.
I have a quick question. Blue, was it just the copy they had? Did you choose between red and blue? How did you end up with blue specifically?
If I remember correctly, it was the only one that I could see. Obviously, I know a lot of people will resonate towards Charizard with the box art, but I think I just went for whatever was there, and blue just happened to be there, so that's what I got.
It's funny too because I think a lot of times the people who ended up with blue, they were the outliers, and you ended up becoming really important in friend groups because you had the version specific Pokemon a lot of other people didn't, which I thought was really interesting. I was also a blue guy, but that's because my best friend growing up was his favorite Pokemon of all time is Charizard, right? I always tell him he's very basic in that way. This is a joke, but thankfully enough, we've grown up and we've always had interest in the different versions, which has kind of worked out. But yeah, I was a blue guy with you. I'm right there with you.
Oh, cool.
So you had the poster. So this question doesn't necessarily go towards Pokemon Blue. This could be because of the poster. Who is the first non-starter Pokemon you really fell in love with as like your guy?
Okay, I will just mention something about the poster as well. In the ordering of the Pokemon, you had things like Ghastly and Horta and then Gengar, and just before that you had Shelder and Cloyster. And for the longest time, I genuinely thought that Cloyster evolved into Ghastly because the sort of the face in the middle. I thought, it came out of it. Yeah, it came out, and that was so. I thought it was like a 5-stage evolution, which I think would have been really cool. But anyway, going back to your question there, first non-starter. I like some weird Pokemon, like Pokemon that people don't really care about. So I really liked Victory Bell and things like that. Maybe people do, so no offense to them, but it wasn't like the common ones. I think for me it was probably Articuno. I'm not really sure why. I just really liked the legendary birds back then. I've got a really strong memory of trying to catch Moltres in Victory Road, and I just gave up because I threw so many balls at it. I just threw the Master Ball, and that's how I caught my Moltres. So I didn't even use it on Mewtwo. I can't even remember if I even caught Mewtwo. I'm sure I did. But yeah, it was Moltres for that. So yeah, the legendary birds. There was a few others. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Like I said, Victory Bell was one. Wheezing was another. So maybe I just really liked Team Rocket. And the anime may have had an influence on some of that.
For sure. So, as a day one Victory Bell fan, how do you feel about its recently received Mega Evolution?
I adore it. I love it. I just saw this gigantic Victory Bell bouncing, and I was like, oh, this lad, I love him. I need him. So yes, I did get Pokemon ZA specifically so I could get a Mega Victory Bell, and I got it, and I was really happy with it. It's so funny. It's great. So dumb. It's a brilliant.
It is,
Pokemon.
but in the best of ways.
Yes,
I'm not
absolutely.
surprised with you liking Victory Bell because as kids we were fascinated with a bunch of things that weren't as dangerous or pivotal to our lives as we expected, like quicksand. And then kids who were born in the '90s and probably the '80s as well grew up thinking that quicksand was going to be a danger we had to avoid in our day-to-day lives for some reason. I don't know if that was because of cartoons or what it was, but also I think kids grew up fascinated, maybe still to this day, with Venus flytraps. And I think Victory Bell is very much the embodiment of that in the cartoon world. And I'm like, oh, okay, I get why somebody would think it's really cool because the idea of a carnivorous plant is so interesting because it kind of goes against what you learn to understand of plant culture growing up as a kid. And you're like, oh, wait, there's a plant that eats living things? That's crazy, right? And then our minds and our imaginations go crazy.
Yeah, I think at the time I hadn't even seen a Venus flytrap before, so actually seeing Victory Bell and then realising, oh, that's what it's based off. Okay, so seeing what the Pokemon are actually based off in real life is quite interesting to me as well. I think, like, for example, the Pokemon starters in Gen 7, I think they're based off endangered species. I don't know if there's any official confirmation of it, but that was really interesting when I read it at the time. I was like, oh, yeah, that's quite possibly why they did that.
It's like a backdoor way of education for kids because I'm with you where I'd be like, what is this Pokemon based off of? And then you do some research and you figure out what it was, and then you learn about the actual animal. And as a kid, I was obsessed with animals in general. So combining like a kid's interest with actually learning about real world biology, really cool. And I think that's part of the series that kind of gets underplayed in terms of helping kids. I mean, there's a whole thing about how a lot of kids learned and improved their reading through playing Pokemon. I know some people who played Pokemon before they even knew how to read, which is crazy to me how they even got through the game in the first place. But
I've heard a few stories of that.
Yeah, exactly. So we talked about you getting your first game, getting the Game Boy Color, so you're kind of future-proofed in that way. I don't know if this is tied to this, but what is your favorite, or maybe you have multiples, but at least pick one. What is your favorite Pokemon memory when you look back at your connection to the series?
Yeah, so there's actually quite a few core memories for me. I think the one that really stands out, it's actually one that I've covered recently as part of the 30th anniversary. There was a Kotaku feature which I contributed to, and I shared a memory like this. So it's the one that comes to mind at the moment. Is when I went to my, again, local game station. I used to live in that place. It was great. I wish we didn't lose it. But they had the Eon Ticket event, which was an event from Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, where you could go to Southern Island and you could get was it Southern Island? I think it was. Where you get the Latios or Latias, depending on which version you had. So I had Ruby, so I got a Latias. And it was great. We didn't really have events like that, at least not to my knowledge, because I would have gone to them. And I obtained mine, and I stuck around because other Pokemon fans were there. They were getting their Pokemon. So I actually ended up staying there the whole day, and I helped the Nintendo rep with other people, because his job was kind of just to make sure that everybody was set up and they hit all the criteria. Like they needed, I think it was like 5 badges that they needed. They needed to have a certain phrase set up, and then you had to connect and link cables and all that kind of stuff. So I helped with that, and I was helping other people connect so they could get their Pokemon. And while I was there, I actually made a friend called Gavin, who I still speak to this day. It's like 22 years later, unfortunately for him. But it was great. You know, that was a really nice memory because it was just a fun day. You do get like a goodie bag at the end, so there was all kinds of items in there. And as a thanks for the help, he gave me an extra bag. So that was a great day. I really enjoyed that, and obviously a friendship with Gavin was great. And interestingly, you mentioned you had a friend that like loved Charizard and stuff. We had a similar situation. Me and Gavin, we went to get Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green together, and he loves like Charizard. He really wanted Charizard, and I was like, I don't think so. I'm getting Fire Red. It's like, I'm sorry, we're definitely getting that one. There was a deal at the local, so it wasn't Game Station at that point. It was Game that we went to, the store, and they had an offer. It was 2 games for £50. I think it was like a £5 saving off the game. So we together bought the 2 games, and I had Fire Red, he had Leaf Green. And then we had the wireless adapters, and we went into the local shopping centre, and we were just testing out the range of the wireless adapters. So it was great fun. Those are 2 memories very close together that mean a lot to me, and it's all with Gavin. So yeah, they're really good memories for me.
Did the Nintendo rep give you anything extra for being there and being his helper, or was it just pat on the back and thank you?
Pretty much. I mean, I did his job for him. I should have got half his wage, shouldn't I, really? But never mind.
I like that. I like how those memories kind of intertwine with one another. You wouldn't have the second without the first. That's really neat.
Yeah, I wasn't even going to mention the second one, but it is kind of closely connected with that. You know, we have continued to talk about Pokemon over the years, and you know, while he's not as huge a fan of Pokemon now, and to be honest, I'm not really a huge follower of the newer games. I still pick them up, but I don't obsess about them like I used to. You know, we still check in and we still talk about, so, oh, they've made this Pokemon now. I actually brought up Mega Victory Bell to him because I think I traded one of his Bell. Yeah, it was a Bellsprout from Leaf Green into Fire Red, and I made that a Victory Bell, and that was the Victory Bell that I had in those games. So that was, again, that's another connection with him. I've still got that Victory Bell now.
I'm glad it's a lot easier these days to bring forward your Pokemon with things like Pokemon Home, because I remember back in the day, transferring your generations forward was a nightmare if you happened to skip one of the systems. It just
absolutely,
yeah.
People don't realize how good they've got it now, because again, you needed to have so much hardware and software to get all of the Pokemon around Gen 3, and you lost the chance of getting Gen 2 Pokemon in Gen 3 unless you bought Fire Red and Leaf Green, had Colosseum, Gale of Darkness, you know, and yeah, it was a nightmare. But you know, as a massive Pokemon fan, of course, I obtained everything. So at that point we had a bit more money coming in, so I could get everything I wanted, and obviously I had as many of the Pokemon as I could.
Now we're going to head to the Elite Four. So this is a set of 4 quote-unquote unique questions. I've doubled up on some of these with guests just because I thought they were interesting questions, but for you specifically, they're all 4 unique because of what you do at Johto Times and some of the interviews you've done and some of the ways you talk about Pokemon in general. I was fascinated with, so I wanted to kind of pitch 4 different questions at you. We'll start with this one. So you're a big advocate for information preservation, especially in the world of Pokemon. I just want to know from you, why is it important, and what's been the most challenging and rewarding aspect of running Johto Times with that specific goal in mind?
Okay. To answer the first part of the question, the internet, it just continues to disappear. We've lost so much culture in forums and fan websites and other unique creative outlets from those days, and we can't guarantee that services like the Internet Archive will always be around, which has been a really good resource for Johto Times, but it won't be there forever. And I think that the earliest era of Pokemon, it's just too important to lose. We just assume that a lot of this information is documented. And while it might be the case with the games, for example, the original games, and what went into those, the fan-created content, you know, the art, the fan fiction, all of that kind of stuff, it disappears. All of those, like, announcements and people running onto forums, and, oh my goodness, this game, it's coming out, and, oh, this I'm going to get this game, and this is the Pokemon that I really like. a lot of that is kind of lost. So we don't really see what the feelings were towards a certain product were at the time, and all that kind of stuff. I think it's really nice to look back. Unfortunately, we've lost so many forums and so many fan sites over the years. So I think it's important that we do something to try and retain that and share it, so that in the future, generations from now, people can look back and see what it was really like for the kids that first started with Pokemon, such as myself. For the second part of the question, one of the more challenging aspects for me has been when I've been researching creators behind old fan sites, and just seeing the love and the attention that they've given what they've created, and then only to look them up to try and contact them for like a chat or an interview, and discovering that they've actually passed away. It's happened a
Oh
few
man.
times with some people that have been closely connected to Pokemon, for example. And I saw this one guy that ran a website, and he died in his early 30s, and it was just so sad. I had to turn off the like I had to shut everything down. I was like, I can't deal with this today. This is really, really sad. Um, so yeah, that's one side of it, but I think it's important to have that that closure on something. Okay, well, we can still maybe do something in the future with that site. We can pay tribute to it. Um, but one of the more rewarding parts of something like this is when we discover lost media or information that just isn't readily available. Maybe people have it in small places, but it's not widely known. For me, it was the art of a Snorlax promo card event. It was Creator Snorlax contest, they called it, and it was done through Wizards of the Coast, and people would submit artwork to go onto the Snorlax promo card. I don't know if you know the one that I'm talking about, but they did run this contest. I can't remember the number of the promo card, but it's one with Snorlax on it. And there was a winner. But there were 20 finalists, including that winner. So there was like another 19 pieces of artwork, and we discovered them. We found them on a
Oh
page
wow.
on the Wizards of the Coast website, and people hadn't seen them. I think they must have been on there for maybe a couple of days or something, because I don't think they were on there for very long. Um, and at the time there was some inaccuracies being shared around about what might have happened with some of the artworks. There was suggestions that maybe Wizards of the Coast staff had drawn some of the artwork for the contest because maybe they didn't get enough entries. That wasn't the case, and it turns out there were like 19 other pieces of artwork. And interestingly, one of the finalists was actually someone that I used to speak to, so they were able to verify that it was their artwork that was a finalist. So that was really cool. And sharing those with everybody was fantastic. And I also really like hearing unique stories from fans about how they grew up with the series. One thing that I've heard a couple of times now is people getting Pokemon Yellow for Christmas and just how excited they were. And it's just a memory that stays with them. And I think that we just need more of that in our lives. The internet, social media, it's all doom and gloom. It's all negative. I think it's nice to look back and see what really truly made us happy and sort of bond with those moments, because they're quite precious. As children, we tend to move on and we look forward and we look at the future, and sometimes we don't really look back as much as we probably should and look at when things were good.
I love that. I never even thought about the fact of tracking down information and obviously finding out that someone who contributed to it is no longer with us. I
Mm.
couldn't imagine, and it's tough because at the same time it gives you an opportunity to maybe share their work and move it forward without them being forgotten as well, which I think is could be pretty rewarding in and of its own self. The contest with the 20 pieces of artwork, I wish they would do more stuff like that these days. Obviously the trading card market is a whole bag of worms itself, but I do think it'd be fun to do a lot more of those events where there's a lot more fan interaction with the design process to some extent. And I do think it's cool that one of those Pokemon theories of, hey, maybe they just didn't get enough submissions, there's no way these could have been fan drawn or fan submitted, but it turns out they were. And I think sometimes we maybe underestimate what people are capable of, and Like, oh no, there's no way people could have done this stuff, and it's nice to hear that. Oh no, people did submit, and it's I don't know, it's a really cool story that you
Mm.
uncovered. Well, maybe not uncovered, but brought to light that
Mm.
stuff. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, I was really
So
happy to share that. I will just say that they do have the Illustrator contest. They do them every year or so. I think last year there was a bit of controversy around it because some artists had submitted AI-generated artwork,
oof,
and I think they had to put
okay.
a rule in there. But yeah, there were 3 finalists. They had their cards, their artwork put onto Pokemon cards. They've done this a few times. I'm not sure if one's been announced for this year, but yeah, it's great. So they do still do it. So I think Wizards of
Okay.
the Coast was one of the first times that we ever had that.
I was not familiar with that. I thought they had stopped doing it, and maybe it's just because I don't
Mm.
really see those cards in the wild that often. But
Mm.
that gives me something to check out after we finish
Yeah,
recording to see if
absolutely.
I can see the winners of all those contests.
Yeah, there's some really good ones.
You had told me that Pokemon Crystal was your favorite game. Obviously, we talked
Mm.
about getting it. Uh, so, with it being your favorite game, I wanted you to pitch me on your dream scenario of it coming to modern Nintendo gaming system. Would you want it to be like a one-for-one port that we recently got with Fire Red and Leaf Green? Do you want a remaster with improved graphics or maybe changed graphics? A complete remake, or maybe something found in between one of these examples I provided? If you were to bring Pokemon Crystal to the modern era of Nintendo, how would you do it specifically?
Oh, there's only one way. It's got to be Legends Celebi. I
Oh,
just want to
cool.
learn more about ancient Johto. What happened to those 3 Pokemon that were trapped in the burnt tower? Was there really a giant Bellsprout that formed the Bellsprout Tower? What was the secrets behind the ruins of Alph? There's so many stories and so much to learn from it, and that would be a perfect, absolutely perfect game. And I actually wrote, because I've actually thought about this before, I wrote up a big feature about that for Johto Times. So you can check that out if you're interested. My friend illustrated some of the sort of more ancient Pokemon, like he drew a giant Bellsprout, and it was great. I really enjoyed putting that together.
So, Pokemon Legends Johto, or I guess Celebi, because it wouldn't be named after the region. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people have hoped before we got the announcement and release of Pokemon ZA. I think people thought that you know Gen 2 hasn't been touched in a while. Maybe that's the next place they go with the Legends games. And it seems with the success of Arceus and now ZA that they're probably going to return to the side series. I'm with you. I hope it is the Johto region because there is so much there, so much good gold to mine in terms of answering questions. And I don't know. I just people often talk about Kanto gets retread all the time, which is true. But with Johto, I think it is in a weird place where it is a little bit underrated in terms of a region because we haven't gone back to it really, and there is so much there in terms of the lore and potential. I just think it'd be really cool to see. I think there's opportunities like we got with Arceus with the different forms, the regional forms of Pokemon. I think with Johto, we could. I always want Heracross to get more love. I'm a big Heracross guy. I love Heracross. So selfishly, I would want a Legend Celebi so I can get an alternate form of Heracross in there somehow, some way. Uh,
Yeah.
I just think he's so much untapped potential. I loved Beetles growing up, and I
Hmm.
was so upset when the only thing he's ever really gotten is a Mega Evolution. He hasn't gotten like a Pre-Evolution or a second form.
Mm.
So that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
I like the simple, succinct answer, and that the fact that you've already thought about this, and I'll definitely include the link to that from Johto Times in the
Oh,
description
thank
of the
you.
YouTube video of this, because I think
Thanks
that's
very
really cool to
much.
go check out. I didn't even know that was a thing. I'm curious myself to go check out the artwork and see what you wrote about it.
Hmm.
So next up, talked about Johto. Your website's title and the conversations we've had make it clear your real passion for Pokemon were formed and resides in the first handful of generations. So the thing that I'm most curious about is, we're often fueled by nostalgia, and once we pick a favorite of something, it's hard to move on. With the first handful of generations being your favorite, how and why did Rowlet of all Pokemon become your favorite?
Oh, you've caught me. I'm a fraud. I should have called it Alola Times, shouldn't I? There you go. It's a good question. I really love Johto and Pokemon Crystal. For me, it was the golden age for the series for me. But I do like aspects of other Pokemon games as well. And, in 3 decades plus it's been around, there's been so much to, absorb. But when I played Pokemon Sun and I had the chance to choose my starter, I knew that it would be Rowlet because he just looked the most appealing. And I do love birds as well. I've had pet birds. I actually have a pet Budgie. But there is a scene in the game where Rowlet actually has to then choose you as a trainer. It's like you can't just, it's like, no, the Pokemon actually has to choose you. And there's this really cute cutscene where Rowlet's looking up at you, and then I look down at Rowlet, and then you just pick him up and you hold him in your hands and you raise him into the air. And it was just such a cool moment. And I just fell in love with how cute it was, this little round orb of a Pokemon. And I couldn't bring myself to evolve him throughout the game, and I even took him all the way through the Elite Four, and I beat it with Rowlet, and he just sits in Pokemon Home these days. But I always make a point to buy something Rowlet related. So I've got a bit of a growing collection of things, and my friends have been pointing out things, and sometimes they'll buy me gifts. I got this recently, like a Rowlet, like a touch light. I think you press it, it's squishy, the light turns on. So I got that for Christmas from a friend, which I was really appreciative of. But yeah, so the thing that I'd love to see is this promo card in the Pokemon TCG where he's just kind of sat in a basket. And I wish it was a real card. I could just, have it and frame it or something. I also really loved his personality in the anime, just from some of the clips that I've seen, because I've not watched the anime fully since Master Quest, I think. I just think it's a great Pokemon. I don't think we need to have any more sort of like, any other reason than that. He's just great. I just love him. I think he's fantastic.
Yeah, I think from a design perspective, it's easy to understand why he'd be anybody's favorite. It was just because you're so closely attached to the first couple of generations, I would have assumed that, oh yeah, nostalgia, I'm going to be attached to, a Johto region Pokemon or a Kanto. And the fact that it's Rowlet is cool because it shows that regardless of where our love lies in generations, there's always a new Pokemon that can come out that wins your heart. For instance, for me, in a similar sense, my favorite Pokemon is from Gen 1. It's Ivysaur, but Ivysaur Arcanine, depending on the day. Yeah, I like Ivysaur because it's not as ugly as Venusaur, and I like the flower blooming. I like Bulbasaur as well, but I like the color dynamics of having the pink on the back. I think it's just an overall better design than Bulbasaur.
That's cool. Yeah.
But with Gen 9, one of my favorite Pokemon since Gen 1, 2, and 3 is Tinkaton, the fairy steel type. I just think it's so funny to have a small little fairy creature holding a giant warhammer. It cracks me up, and I think it's a cool design because it mixes the cutesy of the fairy type with the kind of overbearing, kind of scary parts of the steel typing. And from like a battle mechanic in the games, it's pretty hard to deal with because it has like 0 weaknesses. But outside of that, I just think it's a funny design, and it made me laugh. And
it's great.
I just think it's awesome. To your point, I think whenever a new generation comes out, I'm sure we're going to have new favorites in Gen 10, even outside of the starters that were revealed for Pokemon Day to celebrate the 30th anniversary. And that's what I love about it, is that I guess there's some sticklers maybe who are purists, but for the most part, generally speaking, a new generation is always an opportunity for us to find a new Pokemon we love, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, I've got a little bit annoyed at the Gen 10 starters at the minute because I've got friends said to me, "Oh, look at what's it called? The grass bird in Gen 10, Browse." I said, "Oh, Rowlet's got competition." I'm like, "Excuse me, I don't think so." So it's like, no one's going to replace my little grass bird. But yeah, I just find
their
that
personality is totally different.
Yeah,
not even the
exactly.
same. Yeah. Browse a little angry guy. Yeah. So you're connected to the internet-based online parts of the Pokemon community in ways I never was. Like you, my family didn't grow up with a whole lot of money, so I didn't actually get internet at home until I was in high school, which I guess for you guys is secondary school. I always get that mixed up. It's primary or secondary. Yeah. So I didn't have internet until high school. So I didn't have a chance to get into the forums and all this stuff. And I guarantee you, I probably would have if I had access to that. So I want you to explain to both me and listeners out there the importance of this part of the Pokemon fandom, and why it's near and dear to you and a lot of people out there, because there's a reason these forums build these communities, is because people miss these types of social interactions that were in the early days of the internet and kind of have gone to the wayside in the last couple of decades.
Yeah, so I can't really speak for everybody, but I can certainly speak for myself. There was something special about coming home from school, turning on the computer, jumping onto IRC, which is Internet Relay Chat, for those that don't know. It's basically like primitive Discord. Just to talk to friends, I'd load up Internet Explorer, visit different Pokemon fan sites to learn about, new Pokemon news, any new trading card sets or games, screenshots, especially Celebi with Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire. I have this memory of going online on the computers at school actually and seeing the beach with the little parasols. I think is it Dewford, I think it is. But yeah, just I loved seeing those, and they were in Japanese, of course. It was like, oh, these are cool. And it was just so different from the Game Boy games at that point. The GBA was such a leaps and bounds. Footprints in the sand, that kind of thing. It was really cool to see. So getting all that information was great through the internet. But even like going onto forums and seeing what fans were talking about in response to this news, each community they functioned similarly, but they all had their own unique charm and design that just made them really appealing to visit. Looking back, we were really lucky to have so many spaces where people could just express their love and appreciation for something, and it was owned by the people that made them. It was we had our own little pockets. These days with social media, it's just kind of you say one thing and then it goes viral and everybody sees it, and I just think it's just nice to have little pockets of the community and everyone can just shape it how they see fit. I do believe it also encouraged a lot of young people back then to build websites, and maybe those people went into tech jobs and may have built whole careers from something as simple as running a website back then. In a world where we're just constantly connected to the internet, in work or personal life. Back then you had the option of just logging out and just returning to it the next day to see what people had said, but you could just switch off. You could carry on with other things. Like for me, I used to go out all the time with friends, running and building, dens and all this kind of stuff, and just getting exhausted and dirty, and then coming back home and eating and then going to bed or something. But it was great. You wasn't constantly connected, and I think that was just a really nice thing back then. And there are still small pockets of the internet, the old internet, that will continue to do that. You just have to get out there and seek it, I feel.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, as we grew out of the early days of school when Pokemon rumors would be the thing everyone was talking about, like, oh, who's Pika Blue, and is Ho-Oh gonna be a secret Pokemon that you can find? Yeah, I think forums kind of functioned that way as we got older and started connecting to the internet, and even the internet in those early days, but in the early aughts, is much different than the internet we had in the 2010s, which is much different than the internet we have now. And I do think that it is a way to kind of hold on to your childhood too, because it is something familiar. And to your point, it doesn't feel as if everybody has their eyes on these forums, right? It's a dedicated community, and you guys can kind of share in your passions for whatever the topic may be. And I think oftentimes, with how large the internet is and expansive, maybe it isn't always best to be able to have anybody read your thoughts on something, and it is best to be a little bit more insular and have a specific community, because it limits the potential for random harassment and hate for no apparent reason. And I do think that's maybe why too people are folding back into these forums and more dedicated communities, and maybe in some instances Discord servers, right, that are moderated, because for as much good as the internet can do, there's plenty of harm it can do. And I've been fascinated the last couple of years with the whole dead internet theory, and I really believe that there's going to come a point where interactions are going to be harder to come by that feel unique and wholesome and welcome, and it's just going to feel like you're always talking to a bot for one reason or other. Maybe you are, if dead internet proves to be right. So I do appreciate people like you putting in the work to make these spaces continue. And I know you're not the only one, so I want to heap praise on everyone that's doing it, because exactly, yeah. But you're my into that community, right? I'm not familiar with that stuff, so I'm not trying to heap all the praise on you, but I do want to say I think you're doing a good job with your site and what you're trying to do in both the information preservation and the community aspect of it, because it could be like, oh, everyone does it. True, a lot of people do it, but still somebody needs to do it for it to exist, right? So the fact that you're going out of your way is awesome. And I know you're not the only person that contributes to the site, so I want to give praise to the other people too that work on Johto Times. Thank you for answering that question the way you did. I really appreciate your insight in all of them. Like I said, it's such a part of the Pokemon fandom I'm unfamiliar with in a myriad of ways. So it's cool to hear just how it all functions and why it functions and why people appreciate it and go back to it. That being said, I've heaped a ton of praise on you, Darren, but I want to say you threw me a real curveball with this next segment. We're doing team building exercise. Those who have listened to this podcast before, basically I have my guests pick a fictional character. Could be from video games, books, film, television. And we try to build a perfect Pokemon team for the chosen character. We focus on what Pokemon most fit the core of that character. So it could be vibes, personality, something that fits the lore. It's all up to us to choose what we think fits best. Each of us will present 3 Pokemon, but we come with a couple of extras just to make sure we safeguard and have a team of 6 distinct total choices. The character Darren chose is the 11th Doctor, who was played by Matt Smith. Doctor Who is a series I am not familiar with at all. This is the most research I've had to do on a character, which I appreciate because it helps me try to work my brain when it's, oftentimes I get a character, it's like, oh, this is a Marvel superhero or this is a video game character. And the choices come so easily, which is nice. But doing this, I'm like, okay, what would really work? And it makes me have to go through a process, and I appreciate that as well. So let's see if we can build the perfect team for the 11th Doctor here, Darren. And we'll start with you. Who's your first choice for his team?
Okay, I mean, just the most obvious Pokemon for me would be Celebi. It's just got the ability to travel through time and space, which is exactly what the Doctor does in his TARDIS. And he can make sure that they can just get to the Doctor just at the right moment to save the day.
I like that choice. I think I'd imagine that anybody building a team for a doctor from Doctor Who would have Celebi just because of that aspect, right? The time travel. It kind of fits perfectly. So my first choice, when looking up and learning about the 11th Doctor, I learned that some of his core personality traits are that he's very impatient, he's very childish, and obviously he's English in origin. So my first choice that fits these perfectly is Impidimp, which is the dark fairy type from the Galar region. And I think it's a really cute, kind of chaotic Pokemon. It's known for its impatience. It's known for being childish and pulling pranks. And I figured we must have at least one Pokemon from the Galar region, since Doctor Who is such a big property in England and the surrounding UK. It kind of fits. So my pick is Impidimp. So far we've got a team of Celebi and Impidimp, the good and the bad. Who's your next choice, the third member of our team?
Okay, so I think it's probably going to have to be Alakazam. And the reason for that is Alakazam is just such a super smart Pokemon, and the Doctor is a very intelligent being. So I think that they would want to have a Pokemon that could match their intellect and hold an engaging conversation, especially if the Doctor's traveling alone.
I like that. The psychic types, I feel, go hand in hand with what I've learned about the Doctors in the Doctor Who series. And Alakazam is one of the coolest. I didn't know about this. Are you familiar with the whole Kadabra trading card situation?
I certainly am, yes.
Yeah, they couldn't print any Kadabra cards for years because of a lawsuit with a magician. And recently I don't know if there was a resolution, but I think a year or 2 years ago, they finally had another printing of a Kadabra card, which is fascinating considering that it's a Gen 1 Pokemon and it just has kind of been stuck in the rafters, not being able to get any new cards in a very popular part of the Pokemon franchise. Pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
My second choice, we got Celebi, we got Impidimp, we got Alakazam. like you said, the Doctor is very intelligent, and I feel someone as sharp and curious as the Doctor would be fascinated with this Pokemon simply for what it is capable of doing, and that is Ditto, which is pretty funny considering the recent release of Pocopia. But yeah, I think Ditto would be an interesting case because I think the Doctor would want to study it. It'd probably help to some extent being able to shapeshift and appear as other beings it isn't. I just think it'd be a really fun addition to his team, and he'd probably sit there having it change into multiple objects and wonder why it is stuck with the Ditto eyes and it can't really, replicate realistic looking eyes, which I think is one of the funniest parts of. I know not every Ditto does that. Some Ditto are actually capable of perfect replication. In the anime, they had an episode showing that some just are not good with the eye thing, and some are, which I thought was a funny little thing with the character. But yeah, so my second choice is Ditto.
Mm-hmm. I really like that one as well because the Doctor always has like a plan, and Ditto could maybe even like transform into the Doctor, and then the enemies could capture Ditto thinking that it was the Doctor, and actually no, the Doctor was outside all the time, and the Doctor will just come in and save the day, and so I think that would be a really useful addition to the team. Absolutely.
Your last pick, your third member.
Okay, so for this one, the Doctor likes to travel with companions, and they just keep him in line when the Doctor needs to be pulled back from bad decisions. There's a lot of episodes where you can see just how dangerous the Doctor can be, left to their own devices. For me, I think Arcanine is just a really loyal Pokemon who will always be there for the Doctor unconditionally and be their best friend.
I like that. And it's a Pokemon he can ride to get great distances or chase down people or do whatever he needs to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, from what I read about the 11th Doctor, Arcanine seems like the fiery passion type part of it that can fit his personality as well. So I'm the last choice. So far we have Celebi, Impidimp, Alakazam, Ditto, and Arcanine. Now, I have 3 choices, and I think I know which one I'm going to go with, but I'm going to mention the other 2 real quick. They're not part of the team, but just why I chose them. So I had Metapod, the 11th Doctor, 11th Pokemon in the Pokédex. I thought would be pretty funny.
Okay. I like that one. Yeah.
Also, just the Doctor having a Metapod by his side, not a Caterpie, not a Butterfree, just a Metapod. I think is really funny. I like, have it use Harden and use it as a shield or something. I think it would be really funny. And then I also read that the 11th Doctor has a fondness for music. So Meloetta was a natural choice, the melody Pokemon. Sing and play tunes and stuff to have him chill out when he can. But the one I wanted to choose feels like a Pokemon that the Doctor would end up with after an episode of helping it, which is Absol, the misunderstood Doombringer, right? So Absol shows up and lets people know a natural disaster is about to happen. But according to the Pokédex, oftentimes people think that it is the one who causes the cataclysmic event. So I think, there could be a bottle episode where the Doctor goes and befriends this Absol and makes sure to help clear its name. And then afterwards, he grows attached enough to have it be by his side. And it could be kind of hint at a possible disaster or danger, which would also help him in his journey as well. So I think it's a nice round out to our team. So our team, as it sits, is Celebi, Impidimp, Alakazam, Ditto, Arcanine, and Absol. A pretty good team. Some good typing coverage, too.
Yeah, definitely. That was actually come out better than I thought, because I chose my 3, and I'm like, oh, I wonder what your 3 are going to be. But there's some really good choices there, even the other 2 that you mentioned, like the 11th Pokemon and the 11th Doctor I thought was quite interesting. And of course, evolution and, changing, the way that the characters look through, evolution in Pokemon, regeneration with Doctor Who. It's, there's a bit of similarity there.
So I came with 6, and the only Pokemon I had on my list that you had was Celebi. And like you said, it's like the most obvious ones, like time travel, the Doctor. So I figured, I make sure to come with some other choices for us. So that is the 11th Doctor's team. Next up, we've been pretty positive so far throughout this whole conversation. And this doesn't necessarily need to be negative, but this segment is called Forced Evolution. And I want to know from you, if you could change anything about the Pokemon franchise, what would it be? It doesn't necessarily have to be the games. It could be any aspect of Pokemon. But what would you change if you had carte blanche to do so?
Yeah, I would change how the Pokemon Company operates and give Game Freak and the developers that work with them the time and the resources to put out a product of quality. Because we've seen this with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and with Ilka's Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl games. They don't have enough time in the oven to really make the game that would be exceptionally good, and we could look back on years from now and be like, oh, that game was a masterpiece. It was so good. There was so much love and attention that went into it. And I understand why. They've got to, keep in mind they've got merchandise to put out. There's an anime. They've got to get these games out with the new Pokemon so that they can sell things. And I just feel like that's not going to change, because if you look at Scarlet and Violet and you look at how they were the fastest selling, not even the fastest selling Pokemon games, the fastest selling Nintendo games when they launched. That is a message to say that, well, people will buy these games no matter what the quality. I would hope, and I hope I'm quite a cynical person, so I hope that isn't the case. And I hope that they do put some time and effort. And just recently with, Winds and Waves that was announced, those games, usually in the past, you would have expected them to come out the same year that they've been announced. So I was expecting 2026. In fact, I even went straight to social media and said, oh, it's coming this year. And no, 2027. That's like a whole year plus from now. I'm very interested to see if they're going to use that time to make a really good game, and they've had, it's been years in development possibly, and they actually have had the time to work on this. Or I find out a few months from now, actually, no, they were just releasing this other in-between game for release this year, and they haven't actually learned anything. So I really hope that they have, the time and the resources to make the game that they need to make, and they don't just rush them out the door. It's an insult to, the fans that have stayed with Pokemon all these years, and the kids that are playing these games for the first time. They deserve something memorable, like we did with, say, Pokemon Platinum or Pokemon Emerald, which are, in my view, very, very good, strong games, and we still look back at them fondly now. And they were packed with things as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think also with those games, the scope was much different, right? I'm not giving Pokemon a pass necessarily, but what people expect from a $60, $70 game these days, they kind of have to put a lot of features and content in there to quote unquote justify the price. And I think oftentimes that leads to more, but not more quality. And to your point, there's two things with the new generation. One, it's going to be 5 years between mainline releases, which is the largest gap we've ever had, which is a positive. And I'm just curious to see what the extra time allows them to do. We're in a place now where I think they should shift to a system that a lot of other game developers have, in which they have multiple teams, which allows them to start pre-production on games earlier and have two teams work on different projects at the same time, so one doesn't feel rushed for the other to do so. I guess the other plus we have too is that it's a Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive, which obviously is a bummer for all the people who own a Nintendo Switch that can't afford to get the new console. But from a developer perspective, having to work on just one platform makes it so they don't have to worry about as many bugs and visual and performance issues. So I'm hoping that as well lends itself to a better product overall. And yeah, I agree with you that they're in a tough spot. They're kind of like sports games in a lot of ways, where the demand is there regardless of the quality of the product, and they have such a quick turnaround for these titles that oftentimes people are like, oh, just take your time, you don't have to release something every year. But at the same point, from a financial aspect and the fact that we live in a very capitalist worldview, they're going to make money, so they have to churn these things out, which is unfortunate. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm hoping that the extra year to year and a half provides us with a better product overall. And I was rather impressed with that, reveal trailer, and I'm very curious to see what exactly this extra time goes to. Like you said, is it polish and making sure the product is as good as it can be, or is it that there were development issues and they were forced to, or if they, created arbitrary filler time because of a different title coming out? Time will only tell what the answer is there.
Yeah.
This next segment, Return to Sender. I've been asking you a bunch of questions, Darren. You've been kind enough to answer them for me. Is there anything you'd like to ask me about Pokemon, my relationship with it, anything else?
Yeah, I guess we've been looking a lot at the past today, haven't we? So I kind of want to just flip that on its head a little bit, and I want to ask you, where do you see Pokemon 10 years into the future?
10 years. So this is interesting. I've thought about this a lot because we're coming up on 10 generations, over 1,000 Pokemon, and it starts to become a lot. And I am very curious to see if we ever hit a reset point where maybe they introduce Kanto again and start from the beginning in a new way. And maybe it is a stronger RPG narrative. Maybe it is a type of game that is fun for kids, but also there's enough substance there for adults. That's the thing. One of my biggest complaints with Pokemon is, outside of Gen 5, which I think has the strongest narrative of any Pokemon game, Black and White and Black and White 2, I do think that they've muddied down the narrative outside of the easy complaint of how come your rival isn't your rival anymore. It's like your friend, but also who wants to battle you. I miss the days where you had a jerk that you had to go against, right? Who kind of learns their lesson by the end of the story. And I do think it's robbing children, because at the end of the day, these games are mostly made for children, robbing children of interesting narratives and having them think about things. And I think that, sometimes we coddle kids in a way to believe that they can't understand storytelling that is outside of just basic moral principles, right? Like the good guy should do good, the bad guys are bad. And I do think there's enough nuance that you can be having explained in a story that not only satisfies many of the adults who still play the games, but many of the kids as well. But in terms of the overall Pokemon franchise, I do think there's going to come a point where something needs to be done with the trading cards and the scalping, because it is so unaffordable for just normal people to get into the hobby of the trading cards these days. It is so exorbitantly expensive. And I do think that there needs to come a point in which they separate collectors from the business side of it. I think that's pretty frustrating. I think it's tough when you see kids go into a local store to go pick up a pack of cards or get a bundle, and there's a guy wheeling out an entire cart of product to go flip on eBay, right? Or these card selling sites. I think it's pretty disappointing. I do think that Pokemon has kind of washed their hands of it, and I think they need to be more proactive in that space and kind of make tougher guidelines and rails for people, because I think that to some extent they are responsible for letting it continue to go on as long as they have. It's tough because going back to my original point with the generations, I don't want there to be 2,000 Pokemon. I think that's kind of crazy. And I do wonder if the regional variants is a way to soft launch the future of Pokemon to where maybe the 11th generation is, and I don't know how people would feel about this. I'd be okay with it, but I know people are people. The 11th generation is no new Pokemon. It's all Pokemon that already exist, but all of them are regional variants, so they're different typings than what you know. I think could be pretty interesting. So it's all Pokemon that already exist, just like I said, different typing, whatever the new region is. They're coming to an issue that a lot of other series that go on as long as they do don't necessarily have, where you look at a series like Final Fantasy, right? There's 16 games, all of the spin-off games, but everyone is individually, outside of some of the games that have sequels, their own story and their own world, right? Their own self-contained thing. Pokemon, everything in the past continues into the future with the Pokédex. And there is going to come a point of too much bloat. And maybe that's just somebody like me thinking from a national Dex perspective. Maybe people who hop into a new generation don't really care all that much about the things that existed beforehand. And that's why there's such an emphasis on including Pokemon from previous generations. But yeah, I think there might be a tipping point to figure out how do you go forward when the Pokédex looks insurmountable to people? And maybe that's just a diehard fan thing, and it isn't really that much of an issue for the general audience.
Yeah. If I was to come back on anything that you said there, I would say that Pokemon Company have been buying printing studios, so they have more capacity to make and print
Yeah.
cards to meet demands. That's good. I also know in Japan, I don't know if they're doing it over here in the UK or in the US, maybe they are, but stores have been known to just sell to children for several weeks before everybody else can get their hands on them.
I love that.
Which is a great thing, I think, because it means that the kids are guaranteed to get it. Maybe they could also print cards to order as well. Like you order them, and then 3 months from now you get the cards delivered to you, and and you've guaranteed yourself a secure spot with them, and you can only buy a few packs of each until if there's more demand for a certain set, then they can put more onto general sale so that people can continue to get the rest. But definitely I think that's what we should do. Also, they could just sell the individual cards on their website, and again they could be ordered. I remember when I was younger, and I think they might still do it now, stickers, like football stickers and things like that, you could actually send away and get like each sticker that you were missing. So maybe that's something that Pokemon could do. But I also think that it's not in Pokemon's best interest to do it, because there's demand. They're selling,
Yep.
nearly 100% of what they've got, and they can print more. They will continue to make more. And I think even on a more deeper level, and it's probably we've been conditioned to maybe think this is okay, but trading cards and opening up packs to get rare cards, it's gambling. It's gambling
Yes.
aimed at children. So, Pokemon have some responsibility there. In my view, probably a very unpopular view, given the state of this hobby now. They should just stop printing cards. They should just stop making them, because I think it's got such negativity around it now. It's not a good thing. I managed to buy a pack very recently for the 30th anniversary, and I got one box. There was 2 boxes left. I got one box. It has 3 packs, booster packs in there, and a promo card, and I bought the one, and that was fine for me. I was very happy just to walk away with that. But yeah, there's people that will go in there, they'll buy everything. The stores should have a responsibility as well to actually not allow that much to be sold. They should be directed on what they can and can't sell. So yeah, the stores are just going to sell whatever as soon as they've got it. They want the money. And in fact, some stores are selling them above recommended retail price as well, just to make as much money as they can. So that no one, it's the genuine fans, the people that genuinely want them to collect or play. They're the ones that are missing out, but everybody else at every level, from scalpers to businesses to Pokemon Company themselves, benefit from this greatly. So they're not going to stop.
Yeah, and I do think, the optimist in me, there is going to come a burst of the bubble with trading cards in terms of the maximum value and the whole market and everything. And I'm very curious to see what happens post, bubble burst. That happens in almost every form of economics like this. And I'm very curious to see what Pokemon does afterward. And there is even conversations now with a lot of these high-end collectors that are mad at how much product Pokemon is printing, because obviously the more cards that are being printed, the less value their cards have. So we'll see what happens. That's a whole can of worms in its own, the whole trading card market.
We could do a whole podcast on that, couldn't we, to be honest?
Exactly. And that's not even like the main thing we talked about here today. We talked about, the video games and the community and stuff, but it's just such a focused thing these days in terms of the Pokemon fandom that I wish other aspects of it were focused on. Anyways, enough of that diatribe. So closing here, I wanted to mention this. You did a thing called Pocket Pikachu, the 1 million steps challenge. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
A funny little thing I realized is I saw that the deadline you had for that. Do you remember the deadline you had for that challenge?
I think I'd set myself, I can't remember exactly what it was now, but I did set myself a deadline, and I think I was maybe a few days away from it or something. It was very close.
So the deadline you set was September 21st.
Uh-huh.
It's just funny how the world works in small little coincidences. That's my birthday, which I thought was pretty cool.
Oh, yeah, I specifically did it for you,
21st.
Despite not knowing you. There you go. So I can see into the
Yeah.
future.
I was just doing research on the site and you in general, and I saw that and I was like, oh, it's just a funny little coincidence I wanted to mention. Once again, I want to thank you, Darren, for joining me. I want to shout out jodotimes.com. Please let everyone know what the site has going on, what you have going on, and where they can find your work and everything you're doing.
Yeah, of course. So it is literally jototimes.com, and it's a newsletter. You can, I mean, everything's on the website anyway at any time. But if you register with an email address, you subscribe to the newsletter, you will get each of those into your inbox, so you can be one of the first people to see that. It also has a forum. Everybody's been talking about forums. I get, messages all the time saying, hey, we should bring back forums. And I'm like, yeah, I agree. So we made one. And I recommend anyone that wants to have like a traditional forum to come along and get involved in discussions about Pokemon. We are on Bluesky, but I'm trying not to really focus on social media, but you are welcome to follow us on Bluesky. We're also on Mastodon as well, but yeah, I think Bluesky is probably the main place to find us for anything like that. And we're also on Twitch as well. I like to do a stream now and again. But yeah, jototimes.com, that's the main kind of home for us.
Yeah, thank you again for joining me. I really appreciate hearing your stories and your connection to Pokemon. And, my whole goal with this podcast is to get people from different walks of life, different parts of the world, and different parts of the community. So, like I mentioned earlier, I am just so detached from the forum aspect of the Pokemon community that when you had reached out and been like, "Hey, maybe I could be a guest on the show," I was like, "Oh, it's awesome," because it's an aspect of it A, I haven't covered with the previous guest, and B, I'm totally unfamiliar with. And not only that, during the team building exercise, you're like, "Oh, you're not familiar with the forum stuff. I'll even throw a franchise you're not familiar with and give you the 11th Doctor." So it was a lot of learning on my end, which I appreciate, because as we get older, I think it's important to focus on learning new things, and sometimes as humans we get set in our ways. So it's nice to have a refreshing spark of new information you haven't seen before. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and thank you for
Thank
having me. It's been great. I did say, like, originally I wanted to, speak to more people in the community, share, my memories and thoughts on Pokemon, and just get out there and just discuss this series a little bit more and be seen a little bit more as well. I feel like a lot of the things I've done with Johto Times, we've just kind of sort of stayed in a small corner of the internet, which is great for me because I'm a bit of an introvert these days as well. So I figured that I would try a little bit harder with it being the 30th anniversary, and that kind of made me think, well, maybe we should speak to some more people and get out there a little bit more. So thank you for that opportunity as well.
No problem. This 30th anniversary was an excuse to, I've been hosting a video game podcast for, I think next week is 10 years. Off
Congratulations.
And on. Yeah, and thank you. So the 30th anniversary, Pokemon has been a huge part of my life, and I was like, what can I do? I'll do a monthly podcast and bring on guests. And obviously for some of the episodes, I have friends that I've had in the gaming industry and on the internet for years, and I wanted to make sure to reach out to other people. And you kind of made my job easier because you reached out to me. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Because you know how it is, booking guests and getting people on and figuring out scheduling. And especially with us, there's such a huge time difference. But I really appreciate having you on the show. And everyone out there listening, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to the very best. Here's hoping you catch them all, or at the very least, work to become your very best. Goodbye.